Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. I am Bonnie Violet. I'm a trans, femme, genderqueer, spiritual drag artist, digital chaplain, and person in recovery.
My name is Anthony. I'm a six-year doctoral student in clinical psych. I'm in a different setting. I'm playing Bonnie Violet today, but not. And I care about you.
Yes, and I'm Lulu, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm former Miss Castro Country Club. I'm in recovery for drugs, alcohol, and I'm always searching for balance. And with us, we have
My name is Jugal.
in the mic. Eat the mic.
In the mic.
My name is Jugal. I'm a crypto startup founder, also part of the recovery community, and I live right in the neighborhood.
Hey.
Awesome. And each week we provide and create a brave space where we can talk about topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for people in recovery.
By tackling topics sometimes used to separate us.
Yes.
But before we do that, like, subscribe, comment, share, tell everyone you know about us.
Ding that bell. Isn't it amazing?
Oh, and ding that bell. Ding that bell. Ding that bell.
Isn't it amazing how nice it is when it flows? Because it almost flowed. I think that.
I was cheering because I was like, I didn't interrupt.
Well,
Yes, but I didn't have the script in front of me.
the last 3 weeks you didn't interrupt, but you also missed your cue. So I'm not going to interrupt. I'm just not going to say anything.
I feel like I'm doing progressively better. Today, all I missed was the ding the bell. That was the only part I missed. Jugal, so nice to have you on.
Yes.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, how's everyone doing? Let's start with you, Jugal.
I'm doing very well. I just got back from a trip, so I'm just readjusting
Where were you?
from the jet lag.
Yeah,
I
where
was
were
in,
you?
London for 2 weeks
Oh,
with my man. It was very nice. It was super
aw.
fun. Got to see a lot of really old buildings and nerd out on them, which is my favorite thing to do. So that was nice.
That's awesome.
Lovely.
Yeah, it just sounds horrible.
I'm good.
Ooh.
I'm good. I'm back to my 2 days off a week. It's like for the last 3 months I've been working 6 days and kind of rushing here to be a part of this wonderful. I'm all filling your heads up with it. Things have been really good. It's like I've been working on getting enough rest, working on to get all the rest that I need.
Yeah,
Nice.
was that it?
Yeah, that's it. I feel like I have to pay you guys for information. How are you doing?
Anthony's like, is it my turn?
No, go ahead, Bonnie Violet.
Oh, I mean, I don't really have anything to report. I'm just hanging in there. the best I
Where are
can.
you right now? I feel like this is a new background.
It's a new background and I'm house sitting, but I think it was where I was last week. I'm just in a different room.
Mm.
Try to mix it up a little bit, you know?
Absolutely.
Mhm. Very nice. I'm good. I'm at work right now. I wanted to be on what am I trying to say here? So typically what happens is when I have a client, it normally runs to 3:45 or to 3:30, and so I couldn't run to the Castro Country Club today, so I thought I would come in this way, and I'm really glad I did. The lighting's really good.
We love that you're here.
Yeah.
This may be a solution.
This I feel like there was low key some shade in that.
See,
It was like
Always
I like
had to tell her.
I know I'm like no, I'm not playing the victim. I'm not being defensive.
You know what?
You're always looking for it though. You're like waiting for the attack.
In all fairness, it's
I
like
get
I'm
it. I
usually
get it.
I'm usually like my knives are really sharp and I'm usually like throwing daggers, and so I understand why you might think that this is the case, but no, I really like it when you are part of this.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really good segue for today's topic. Owning your shit or owning your shit, our shit. And I think maybe we can start by example. So, what I was thinking about while you were talking was like, oh wow, that's so interesting. Like, I made it about me. Like, you said something, and I immediately was like, oh, I wonder if he's being shady just based on like our dynamic, because like I was gonna say we take jabs at each other, but I feel like you take more jabs at me than I take of you.
Well, that makes sense that you feel that. it makes a lot of sense that you would feel that. But I feel like you've been really good about taking those jabs, because I felt like well, you know what it is? It's like it's a volley. Like, because I
You
don't
keep saying that. I don't know that it
volley
is.
because I think that if I didn't have you participating, I probably would not keep going, because that would just make me look like a bully.
So now you're blaming the victim.
Huh?
Does that
Oh, so you're saying you're a victim?
Yeah, I know you said you weren't a victim, but now you're a victim.
I walked her. I knew what I was doing. I promise I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, no.
Sorry, Jubal. This is just us.
A
Well,
big,
it's them actually.
yeah,
This is foreplay. This
Yeah.
is um so enough of me. What are some things that come up for folks? Juba, I feel like you were going to say something a second ago and I cut you off.
Well, just from what you were saying about going on the defensive immediately, when I was thinking about this topic earlier, I thought that's, my biggest issue in owning my shit is whenever anything happens, I'm immediately looking for who or what to blame outside of myself, and I don't look at my shit. So it takes an effort for me to see what's going on from my side of things, because my go-to is that I'm being attacked or that someone's coming for me. So something outside of myself must have caused this problem or issue, and that's the first thing that I go to before coming back to, what did I do or what part might I have had in the situation.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, I feel like there's so many things that come up for me when I hear you say that. There's like a part of me that thinks about like the role of trauma and how I hate using the word trigger, but it has ground. Like sometimes, like if folks have trauma, they can be in a situation and it can elicit certain feelings from them, and you're popping off without wanting to pop off. You know what I mean? I feel like one of the things that I really like about the friends that I have, especially in recovery, is that I feel like a lot of my friends have an understanding of like, well, we know how trauma impacts people's bodies. And so we can be a little bit more graceful when each other, when someone does or says something that's like a little out of pocket.
absolutely. No, I think that obviously, because we don't know everybody and what they've been through, I think that, like you said, the fact that we have people around us who understand trauma, or who understand that, if I react to something or if I'm triggered, then I get to come back and talk about it, or acknowledge that, yeah, maybe I read the situation wrong way, kind of like with you. This was a jab. That was a jab. So I just wanted you to recognize it.
I feel that. Bonnie Violet, how about you?
How about me? What shit?
Exactly.
What are you talking about? No, I mean, I've been kind of in that, like my shit recently, like I've been having a really hard time being in public and being outside of the house, and I can't figure out if it's transness, I can't figure out if it's depression, I can't figure out like what the hell it is, but I've been having a really hard time like even leaving my house, and I don't have access to a lot of the things that I'm used to. I just feel really needy. And so like all last week I didn't like reach out to friends to be like, hey, I just need to like not be alone. And just kind of like spiraled in like a really bad way. Like to the point where like I almost like thought I might need to go to a hospital, because I was just really struggling with like, I'm like new in town, the new girl in town, and I have new friends, and I want to like lean into them, but I'm feeling like I'm too much right now, because I'm just in such a state of need and transition, that it's really hard for me to kind of be on that other end. And I finally, like my girlfriend finally like texted me last night, and she's like, how are you? And I'm like, to be honest, I'm not good, you know? And then she called me, she's like, hey sis, what's up? And I'm like, and of course she's like, come over to my house. Like I went to her house immediately. We hung out, she gave me a new bra. And like we just like she's like, you're stupid. Like we've been like, she's like, I wanted to hang out with you all week too, and I just never messaged you. And then I did these things that I wished you would have been at. And I just so it's like I know it was like kind of crazy, but it was just like something I couldn't get out of either. And It's interesting. Yeah, that's my shit, I guess. And
It's really, it's
bringing out,
valid. It's valid because like as I was listening to you, I'm thinking that's amazing because it's like my first impression of you is thinking you are bold, you're fierce, and like I'm gonna step out and well, like a sunbeam or whatever. But you don't think about the things that people need to kind of contend with. Because I can imagine what I'm okay. So I have a friend who jokes about me being from Sacramento, but what I left San Francisco for a year and I went to Sacramento. In my mind, Sacramento is it's a different energy. It's a small place, and my personality was larger than life. And thank God for the drugs because I was on drugs at the time. But I don't know that I would have been able to acclimate or to find out how I fit in. And not knowing how you fit in is definitely going to bring up issues of otherness or not a part of. And we talk about it like in 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 recovery, like my need to feel connected, I need to feel a part of. But if people are freaked out by even the fact that I am, or if I come off too arrogant, to this or that or whatever, and people are turned off, I'm in trouble. I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah.
Bonnie Bell, I just wanted to say I'm sorry that you're going through all of that. I can't like begin to understand what that's like. But it weighs on my heart a little bit, so I'm sorry. And I hope things are looking up.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is it's really hard. Like
Hmm.
life has been really, just existing is really hard right now. And
Mhm.
I try to do my best, and it's been that way for a while. And I've been doing my best to just try to, show up, do the things, know that it'll pass, know that it's not for naught. And there's, like in most of my moments, I know that to be true, and I have hope and like all that sort of stuff. And every now and again, it can get you, and when
Hmm.
you get away from your supports and I don't have a therapist anymore. I don't have the rooms as much, like just all those sorts of things. It really just takes a little, and it doesn't take that long to kind of get into a place of like feeling like you're all alone, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is so wild
Yeah,
because
I
I
get
often
that.
say like, yeah, because I often say separation is a delusion. Like I say that all the time. It's not true. We're never really alone. We're all connected. And yet I can still find myself in this place where I'm
Hmm.
not experiencing that to be the truth.
That's real. Yeah, that's real. Um, you reminded me a lot of like when I traveled home years ago. I was removed from all like the things that like fill me up. So like all of my friends, all of my routines, the rooms, etc. And I remember all it took was for a couple days for like all of my defenses to be kind of like chipped away at, and maybe not even my defenses, but like the things that make me feel strong, like all of those things started to get chipped away at. And I remember feeling like I actually, in fact, I left. I came back early because I was like, I can't deal with this. And it took meeting with my therapist for me to see like, oh, actually, like that was bound to happen because I didn't have the supports that I generally need. Um, so I feel that. I feel that. I before we kind of keep going on, I one of the things I noticed is in the last couple of weeks we haven't invited the audience to kind of like chime in until much later into the show. So I just wanted to invite folks who are listening in. Um, if you're on our live feed and you want to say something, go ahead and comment. Any thoughts you have about owning your own stuff, any experiences about owning your own stuff, we would love to hear them. Jugo, you are sitting there pretty and quiet. What's coming up for you?
Well, thank you, Anthony.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate this different perspective because when I originally thought about owning my shit, I'm thinking about in my relation to others, and like the effect that I'm having with them and how I engage with them. But what you're bringing up is like owning my own shit with myself. That requires, this self-awareness that I often lack, or at least lack in how much I wish I had more self-awareness. And I'll get myself into these kind of depressive places, where I'm late, and I have no excuse. Bonnie, you've moved into a new place, it's a new culture, and a new community, and I live right up the street, and I will sit in my bedroom alone, and stew in my shit, and not realize that it's because I am allowing my head to spin and I'm not engaging in self-care and I'm not reaching out to loved ones, one of which I live with. I live with a best friend of mine who's in recovery, but I can hide in my room, just going in circles, spinning down the drain, not having the awareness that, of where I'm at and why these thoughts are coming up and why I'm in the place that I'm at. And just not owning my shit personally of what's going on inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes too, what you're making me think of is once you're owning your shit, whatever that means, like for me, it means like I have awareness about something. It's like, what am I doing with that information? Like I can identify that like I have a pattern, but what am I doing with that information? So for example, I've been kind of like in a rut over the last couple of weeks. Like I normally when my routines start to fall apart or I start to get like really anxious, the first things I turn to are like food, sex and intimacy stuff. And I'd noticed over the last couple of weeks that that's been happening because I've been under a lot of stress. And then I thought, okay, but I know this about myself. So like, what do I do with that information? And today I was like, oh, well, it's actually quite simple. Like one of the things I do every morning is like, I'll meditate and pray. And like, why am I not meditating and praying? And it was really that simple. And I feel like maybe this is rare. Maybe this hasn't always happened for me, but I meditated for 5 minutes. I prayed after that, and then like things just started to sync up, and today's been a wonderful day. And that's just for today. But the takeaway is like, okay, once you are owning your stuff, what are you doing with that information?
Yeah. So the thing that I was thinking about as you were speaking, Anthony, two things. Okay, so I guess it's a process because it's one thing to get to a place where you acknowledge that it is your shit, but sometimes you stay in it without taking any sort of action. And I think that it may go back to how when I came and I thought I had to do everything on my own. And
Right.
even though I have all of these voices saying, you don't have to do this alone, this is a we program or whatever, I feel like there's a part of me kind of like before I go get a pedicure, I've got to polish my nails up and make sure they look just so that they can do the work. Or like if I'm hiring somebody to clean up, things have to be a certain way so you won't judge me. I mean, maybe that's what it comes down to, like being so concerned about how somebody else is viewing me in a situation. And again, we're constantly giving examples of how people just love us, and they are not going to judge us for being human. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, do you guys
go ahead.
I know like you guys have all gotten a little bit of time, and I know sometimes my reluctance or my inability to kind of share my shit when I need to, or to like be super vulnerable is like, I sometimes struggle because I want to make being trans look good, and I want to make being sober look good, and I don't want to like scare people away, or and that's dishonest. But there's parts of me where I feel like it's like my close friend, she's getting ready to start hormones, and I was like, I don't want to bring my like challenges to her because I don't want to, and she's like, bitch, like you ain't you ain't gonna do that, you know what I mean? And she was like really great. And the cool thing is she's much younger than me. But she's, how, and that's the whole thing that I love about being in recovery too. It's like you can have 3 days or 30 days and have something to offer, especially when one of us is kind of like in our sickness. Do you think that isolation and that thinking, is that our addiction? Is that what we're like, is that the thing? Or
yeah,
I think I hear a lot of people label it that. Yeah.
We have a comment coming.
Oh, let's see it.
Yes. Hi. Angel.
Want
to read it?
Yeah, sure. Owning my shit was hard at first when I got sober because I was so used to running away. Thank you for that, Angel. So I was actually thinking about that because I had a conversation with someone this past weekend while I was doing service at the Castro Country Club. And I was having a conversation with someone and we were talking about when is someone like responsible for their behavior, right? And one of the things it made me think of is like, there is an assumption, like when we talk about owning our shit, like a person has to be able to see it before they can own it, right? And you can't expect someone to own something when like they have no idea it's there, And it takes me back to this idea of like trauma. Like when is someone not capable of seeing their own stuff? Well, in my opinion, and maybe in my own experience, like people are not able to see it. Let me speak for myself. I wasn't able to see it because I needed to not be able to see it. Like it felt too dangerous for me to see it. You know, like I've been in the program for over 10 years now, not continuous. And I don't feel like I actually started living my life or like for things to start to connect for me until like 3 years ago. Right. And so I look back and I'm like, wow, like, man, I must have been really hard to be around. And thank goodness that people were loving and gracious. Right. The last thing I wanted to say, I was thinking about Bonnie Violet here is like allowing people to love you and allowing people to be your friends, you know. The other day, someone that I absolutely love in the program did something nice for somebody else in the program, and I thought, well, why didn't she do that for me when I was sick? Right. I was like, and I was so upset, and I don't ever text her, because I don't ever want to trouble her. And then I thought to myself, oh, it's because you never like ever asked for help. You never like told any of those people when you were having a hard time. And so like I've created this narrative in my head, like, oh, they don't love me, but I've never given you a chance to love me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I you know, when it comes to Angel's comment about running too, and why I couldn't like look at myself and see what was going on is because if I looked at myself then and there was something wrong, I would have to do something about it. And that terrified me because, you know, going back to like trauma induced behavior, like when I didn't grow up in a safe environment in which you could actually bring things up or talk about issues. It was a terrifying environment where I never knew what action, thought, or behavior was going to create danger. So I made myself as small as possible and I molded myself into being whatever I needed to be to stay safe. So like there was no room for self-analysis or because, you know, owning my shit requires some type of possible, you know, conversation, which anything like either with myself or with someone else, and anything that involves engagement and a possible conflict, I will avoid at all costs. Yeah.
I think to answer your question too about when we're responsible or when a person is responsible, I think we're always responsible. I mean, and it shows up in our consequences because if I'm not aware of a behavior, like I'll use specifically, I've gotten much better at not being controlling, but it still shows up, and it shows up in ugly ways. It showed up in more subtle ways. And it actually talks about it in the big book about like trying to be the director and trying to control this and that or whatever. And I think the consequence to that is that there are some people who have been turned off by me and therefore have pushed away. And that's how I have to take responsibility. But the way I take responsibility now is when I get to a place where I can own up my shit or say, hey, I realize that, you know, I'm being controlling, and or like early on before the conversation, what we were talking about, like just taking it upon myself to say, hey, I'm going to invite somebody to participate in this without running it by, realizing that, you know, okay, so maybe I've overstepped and I need to acknowledge that I've overstepped, especially because initially I wanted to say, well, the response that you had, Anthony, was overreacting, but that was because I no. I want to.
Wait, you're saying I
No,
overreacted?
no. Let me qualify. No, initially, that's what I want to say because I wasn't looking at my part. I wasn't looking at my part. I was simply just showing up, guns ablazing, thinking and not thinking about other people in this. And once I was able to do, you know, once I was able to acknowledge that, instead of saying, "Yeah, I think you're overacting, Anthony," I was able to say, "Yeah, you know, I was moving too fast," you know, and I get to acknowledge that part. So the only reason why you're hearing that I thought you were overreacting is because I'm explaining it now because I've let go of that. I've since dissolved that was like a part of my like process leading up to actually taking the right action. How about that?
Right.
I
Well,
feel
part of
that.
that is well, and I think part of that too is like I think that it's reasonable to feel like that's how Anthony's responding because that's been a trend. But I think it's also important, no, like not in a bad way, but I think it's also important to be able to allow Anthony to change and be different. Just like with like myself or Lulu or anything else. I just wanted I didn't, sorry, Anthony, I didn't want to like, I just was trying to say that like, we still also have to like, let people be able to change too, that they don't have to always be how we've always seen them.
So we're not going to skate past this trend. What are you talking about? What
What's
do you
that?
mean? What do you mean when you say there's been this trend?
Girl, own your
There's been
shit.
one other situation.
How many
There's
times
been
have
one other
you,
situation.
Yeah.
how many times have you overreacted? Like, it's cute, it's fine. Like, I'm just,
What?
I was,
There's only been one other time.
You think just one?
When was the other
girl.
time?
It's
Okay.
not about,
I
there's
guess
not fault in it.
no. I guess here's my issue with this. This is I love that we as a group have used our dynamic as talking points for the show. Uh, so my first thought here is, I guess there is a value judgment in saying that I've overreacted. So if we make this objective, right? If I'm looking at someone and they're having an experience, it isn't fair for me to say like they've overreacted. Like obviously they're having an experience. Um, and I feel like like sometimes a person like unless you have two people who are looking at something exactly the same way, it's really easy to say like, oh, they overreacted. So I guess that's what I'm pushing back on. Now, admittedly, there have definitely been cases, and I do have a tendency to overreact. For example, like remember when we had the photo shoot thing? Like I most certainly overreacted with that. Like not one of my best moments. For folks at home, what ended up happening was that we were having a promo shoot and I don't remember what happened. It was like something changed. There was like one thing that changed and I lost my mind. Like I just and I don't and that's my own stuff. Like I am really bad with like things being shifted when I like because in my head I can be like really concrete about stuff like that. And so I definitely overreacted. And I have a tendency to do that. Like so that's why like having that information, I often now on the best days will have to give myself space between like the initial reaction and when I actually do something.
Ooh, now that's something right there, because that moment that you're talking about is something that I have never had until recently because of, recovery. And that is like one of the biggest gifts. I don't know how I'm going to relate this to the topic of owning my shit, but the nice thing about having that moment is I have less shit to end up owning up to.
Oh, absolutely.
Which
No.
is really nice.
No, I totally see where it relates. There was an individual, like when I first came into the rooms, and he used to say, the longer that I stay sober, the more I get each year I get a few seconds of pause, a few seconds of pause, and the longer. And I think that's grace. That's grace because it's like usually when I don't take a moment to think about what's going on and I react. And I think some of the areas that maybe wrong we're wrong. Our interaction on text and whatever, you can't really express what you want to express that way, and I can read it or receive it any way that I want to, and it does not mean that that's exactly what's going on. So on that end, I can say maybe each time I thought you were overreacting, that wasn't the case. But the other piece was the reason why I kind of agree with that is because the few times that it did happen, we talked about it, and you did say you were overreacting. So I got that from you. I didn't get that from my own judgment. I got that from you, and because and I think that we were just working through something, and so I think that's why that was it. So I want you to know that I'm not thinking that everything that you do is overreacting. I'm only going based on what you've given me because you said it. Because I trust what you said.
There's a
Go
great
ahead,
question
Bonnie.
in the comments.
What is it?
So how do we Jaylon says, so how do we navigate people's tendencies to not own their shit?
Isn't this where gaslighting comes in? Like people who don't own their shit.
Before we move on, so for the world who's listening in, I think so. Going back to this idea of like owning your own shit, I think what's coming up for me is that I certainly know I have a tendency to overreact. I have many stories of knowing when I overreact. What's hard is knowing when to push back. right? Because sometimes someone can say something to you, and if it corresponds with some insecurity or some like vulnerability that you had, it's really easy to take that on, right? And so sometimes it's really hard for me to know when to take that on, right? Like okay, like in this situation, can I own that I'm actually overreacting, or are you just not able to see where I'm coming from and therefore are not capable of seeing why this is like a normal response? So that's where I'm at. But I most certainly do have a tendency to react, and it's something I've been working on for the last couple of years. It's been very hard. I do have strong reactions to things, and I mean, it's taken so much. It's taken therapy, it's taken recovery, etc. To your question, Jaylon, I don't have an initial answer. How about other people?
Well, I feel like to some degree we're navigating some of that, right? Like we're having conversations about how we're experiencing one another, and to some degrees that could be like navigating either owning shit or not owning shit or whatever, but it's like being able to have a conversation about it. And some like I think the thing, like the beauty about a relationship, especially a good relationship like ours that we're working on, is that we can bring our shit and we can work through it. Like for me to expect to you to not I want to use a word not overreact because I don't want to like keep going there, but like for like to know that maybe that's just how you are at times, like me accepting and understanding that can allow me to respond to you better, or to take that pause or whatever. And I think those are the things that we do in relationships, is that we can't always expect people to change their shit or not to have any shit, but what we can do is to try to figure out how to accept that, and or be more compassionate, or allow some grace, or and some things are a little bit more difficult than others to kind of like work through. But I think like ultimately it's being able to have a conversation, and I think being in right relationship with the person that you're having that experience with.
Absolutely. I think that
Right.
I think I feel as though like if you those times when you feel strongly, that's when you should push back. Like I know that you are thoughtful. You are concerned about not like creating something that doesn't need to be. But I think that in learning how to be better with you, I think that especially like what Bonnie was saying, when you're in right relationship with people who get it or understand, I think that you push back, especially because like what you were saying is like, just because I'm perceiving something a certain way doesn't mean that that's it. And maybe it's a lesson that you don't have to learn, that, but I get to learn that in pushing back, it's going to help everybody participating to grow in the way that they need to grow. As far as like the other piece about, I think that if I value our relationship and you are someone who is not able to own your shit, then the onus is on me to decide how much further because at some point it's going to take a toll on me. And if you were if it's someone who is just full of shit and not willing to own their shit, there's only so long I'm going to want that kind of energy in my space, because we get to decide who is in our space.
Yeah.
And if it's someone who, no matter what, usually I find myself, as tough as it is, maybe walking away and loving them from across the street, because
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. I find over the years, as I change, the people that I surround myself with and that I spend my time with changes, and most of that is because our behaviors aren't aligned, and they what they value and what I value are basically what I'm valuing is changing. And I mean, I'm sure for them as well, but that's from my perspective. And so I just don't enjoy spending as much time around certain people, or I set boundaries in which I'm like, this behavior doesn't sit well with me. But that goes back to like a big character defect of mine, which is conflict avoidance. And often I will choose to distance myself or set a boundary rather than confronting that person about the behavior. So now that's not like that it's not that that's always the wrong option to choose. I mean, I have to pick my battles. I can't go around, you know, also just judging everyone's behavior and saying, hey, this isn't so well with me. You should do this other way because that's how I would prefer it, you know? So it's not that it's a bad thing for me to do that necessarily, but I do think I lean more towards like avoidance and being like, okay, I'm going to adjust my expectations with this person, and maybe, you know, not spend as much time with them because this really fit well with me. Now, when you're talking about relationships that, you know, have a lot of trust, with people that I'm very involved with in my life, like I have to go and have that conversation with that person eventually because, you know, of the nature of that relationship. I want to keep that relationship. So it really just depends on the situation, the person, I think.
Right. I'm mindful of time. We have 10 more minutes or 5 more minutes. What I did want to say is I love the mentioning of trust. It makes me think about like what's worked for me, because I used to be very black and white. There was no gray, right? And what I've been able to do in the last couple of years is I've been able to like hold more gray in my relationships. And the way that I've been able to do that is like the first thing I tell myself if I'm having a conflict with someone is like, I might be wrong here. Like this thing that I'm holding on to, I might be wrong. Or if someone's coming to me and they're upset about something, I try not to say like they're wrong or they're right. Like my first thought is this someone I care about? And am I willing to listen? Because never mind if they're wrong or right, like this is someone I care about and they're bothered by something, right? And so I'm prioritizing the relationship and the friendship rather than prioritizing being right or wrong. And at the same time, that gets very difficult when, if say, for example, something keeps coming up over and over and over again, it becomes hard to hold that space for someone. And then the thing about trust that resonated with me is the only time that I'm able to be graceful with someone, and I think maybe someone be graceful with me, is if I trust them, right? Because if I don't trust them, it becomes so much harder for me to believe that they're not trying to harm me. Right. And then I think that goes back to what Lewis was saying is like, that's when you can have gaslighting and that's when, you know, like vulnerabilities could be exposed. And I think that's one of the things that makes relationships for me so difficult because it's like, if I trust you, that might mean that I'm opening myself up to being hurt. Right. Another kind of like variable that makes relationships complicated.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that hasn't come up as much, and I think Anthony, you've always usually been really good about this, but also like whereas as folks who are in a spiritual recovery program, it's like where's God, where's higher power and all that too, because you know I think Lulu talked a little bit about that idea that maybe it's not about somebody else changing, it's about what I get to learn because that person did that thing, right, that maybe I didn't like or whatever. And I think that's a God economy. That's like a sacred economy, you know, like in God's world, we fuck up, but it kind of can have reason, right? It can have purpose. It can be for better versus worse. And so I think that's the other element is really being able to bring God or higher power into that moment in one, whether it's a pause or it's like a belief or a virtue or a principle that can kind of be applied to like this situation.
Yeah. I love thank you for bringing up God and higher power, because I think one of the things I most certainly struggle with is like sometimes I overcorrect, and I think I overcorrect when I'm relying on myself, you know, for like sometimes when I overcorrect, I might let people walk all over me, or the opposite might happen. I might become like really militant about my opinions. And often the only way, actually not even often, the only way that I've been able to find middle ground is when I really am turning things over and I'm allowing for something else to take control, because then the relationship will unfold naturally and I don't have to kind of get my hands all over it.
I was just listening to both of you and I was like looking at the screens and my heart was completely full because I love you guys. I know. I'm sorry. I don't do sappy that often, but when I do it, it's like I like to tug at your heartstrings.
It hit.
Oh, I really appreciate that.
This conversation has been really good. I love it.
Yeah. Do we have 5 minutes left? I always forget. Is it 40 or 45?
It's about that time. It's like,
45.
so I just want everybody to know, if you're ever trying to reach me, get a hold of me on the gram at LouisLou86. I have fun pictures there. You can send me a DM and we can talk. Let me know what you want to talk about.
And I'd love to hear from you all as well. You can find me at queerchaplain.com or on any of the socials. I'm really excited about a Drag and Spirituality Summit that I'm hosting in October in Chicago, looking for folks to get involved. So if that interests you, reach out to me.
And you can find me at alucas CCC on Instagram. I have good news. One of my sponsees has offered to work on my Instagram for me.
Good show.
So we'll see what happens there.
What
So you can
step
reach
is
me.
that?
I don't know. We'll incorporate. It's service is what it is.
He's like, the only way you can stay sober is to work on my social medias.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he offered and his ideas were brilliant. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So the other thing is, if another way to reach me or any of us is to reach out at podcast@castrocountryclub.org. And of course, there's our speak pipe. If you want to leave us a message, that you can find us at www.speakpipe.com/@the-CCC. And Jugo, how about you? How can people find you anywhere? Do you want people to find you?
on 19th and Castro.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can find me here at the club or on the streets.
You can find me at the hotspot.
So is that a no?
Oh, I mean, yeah. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'll always take more followers at Jugs. Oh shoot, that was my Twitter.
How do you spell that?
My Twitter is at JOOGZ6, and my Instagram is at Jugs JOOGZ_Prince of Men.
Nice.
Oh wow, there's so many questions to be asked, but we don't have the time.
You'll have to follow.
Exactly.
I don't follow anyone except for Bunny Violet.
I only follow me. You can reach us at castrocountryclub.org on our podcast /podcast. We have a lovely new website there. You can come in, you can check out old episodes, and make sure you tune in every Tuesday at 4 p.m. where we go live on our Castro Country Club Facebook and YouTube channels.
Yeah. And the reason why I don't follow people is because social media makes me very nervous. So it makes me so nervous. Like I don't even scroll on Instagram because I'm like, I don't want to see something that's going to make me hate myself or hate the world. So I'm just not going to look at it.
And if you're not nervous, you can find us on all of your favorite podcast sources.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I know it's a great modeling of owning your shit, Anthony.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and boundaries. There's a positive correlation between social media use and low self-esteem and depression. It's well researched.
So everybody to know that the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community. They provide programs and services that help people change their lives by supporting personal growth. Their vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community, opportunity, and support. And again, you can find more information at castrocountryclub.org. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Jugal. You're welcome.
Thank you, Jugal. Nice to have you on.
Thank you for having me, guys. This was fun.
Yes.
Yeah, you know who we don't thank enough? We don't thank Brandon.
I know.
Behind the camera.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Can't see him, but he's the one that keeps us everything going.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very nice. All right, cool. I guess we're saying bye to everyone. We love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
See ya.